Olivia Butts, that would be great.
Hi, and good evening. On behalf of Black Lives Matter Bloomington Normal, I encourage you to pursue consideration for a welcoming city ordinance for the city of Bloomington. As one of the many community groups that was urging many of you to consider and adopt this ordinance about 3 years ago, it is time that we stand up and stand with our immigrant neighbors. As you will see tonight, we are not the only local community group that supports the revisiting of this ordinance, but just one of many who know that this ordinance will affect many of the local community that they work with every day. After we recently saw the passage of a false solution, the Welcoming America Ordinance, it's more important now than ever to create policy that stands up for our immigrant community. Thank you so much for the chance to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Willie Halbert.
Willie?
Good evening to the City Council and everyone. My name is Willie Holton Halbert. I've spoken before on public comment regarding Welcoming Cities Ordinance, and just wanted to reaffirm the need for such an ordinance. Bloomington has been known for a community that is inclusive. I have fought for over 40 years within this community to stand up for the rights of all. We may have some differences, but there are some common threads that we all share. We have families, we have our children, we work in our community, and one of the things that we tend to get sidetracked is looking at the differences. As we look at the immigrants, one thing we need to consider is that they have rights that should be protected and should be cared for. They should be able to be with their children. Many of them are work as essential workers and have contributed to our community, and we should adopt the Welcome City Ordinance, which will advance a positive migration agenda by providing a venue for our city to share promising practices and policy that will build cohesive communities, one that embraces and includes immigrants and fosters opportunity for all. I believe all immigrants, regardless of migration status, should live without fear of family separation, arrest, or deportation. I believe our city should adopt the Welcoming Cities Ordinance prohibiting local law enforcement cooperation with federal ICE enforcement, deportation activities, protect individuals who have lived and worked here for years. I realize that you're considering the Welcoming America and nothing against that particular policy, but this one has meat, and it's the one that the immigrants are in support of and that our community as a whole are in support of. So I would hope that as you consider this, that it deserves a vote. And I pray that you'll consider these thoughts and support our immigrant community, for we are all one. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie.
Carol Coos.
Yes. Hi. I'm Carol Coos, chair of the Central Illinois chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. The National ACLU supports the implementation of welcoming city ordinances. These ordinances are essential in building trust between the police and the community, including those without documents. As stated to me by a Mexican immigrant who is a member of this community, when people believe that they will be reported to immigration or when they fear that they will be viewed with suspicion because of how they look, then they avoid contact with police. Even when it is to their benefit or to the benefit of the community, people who fear the police will not report a crime or aid law enforcement. Department of Justice data shows that communities with welcoming city ordinances actually have lower rates of violent crime than those communities who do not have such policies. This is apparently from the increased cooperation with police that results from a sense of security and goodwill that comes with the assurance that a welcoming city ordinance brings. Illinois has implemented the Illinois Trust Act, which is a statewide restriction on the arrest or detention of undocumented citizens based on immigration status or a detainer request by immigration authorities. The Trust Act is not as broad and inclusive as a welcoming city ordinance. As well, many law enforcement agencies ignore the Trust Act, and there is no mechanism for individuals to redress any violation. Last of all, a welcoming city ordinance sends a strong message that the community supports treating individuals fairly and with respect. The ACLU stresses that the following elements should be contained within the ordinance. Inquiring or investigation into citizenship or immigration status will not be allowed except as required by state law. No threats or coercion by police or governmental authorities shall be made based on immigration status. No agent or agency will disclose information regarding citizenship or immigration status of any person unless required to do so by legal process or the authorized disclosure in writing of the individual or their guardian. Delivery of city services will not apply any special conditions based on immigration status except as required by law. City police shall not arrest, detain, or continue to detain a person based solely on civil immigration violation or ICE detainer. City police shall not permit ICE access to a person in custody for the purpose of immigration enforcement or notify ICE about custody status or release date. In short, a Welcoming City Ordinance affirms that it is the city's intent to be fair, just, and respectful with its immigrant population as it is with its general population. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Next up, we have Don Carlson. There you
I'm
go.
sorry, I was muted. Mayor Renner and members of the City Council, my name is Don Carlson. I'm a resident of Bloomington and the Executive Director of Illinois People's Action. Nearly 4 years ago, IPA helped lead the Keep Families Together campaign in its effort for a comprehensive Welcoming City Ordinance for Bloomington and Normal. We continue to support a comprehensive Welcoming City Ordinance. A question that's been asked is, why would a simplified ordinance be acceptable in Normal and not in Bloomington? Groups part of the Keep Families Together campaign may each have their own analysis, but for IPA, the answer is simple. Normal had little or no track record of engagement with ICE. Normal government and police were open to new administrative policy, disclosure, and transparency. Government and stakeholders met in good faith toward a resolution. However, Bloomington Police Department during the same period had 4 separate instances of communication with ICE, including asking ICE if they were interested in, quote, an undocumented immigrant, unquote, in 2015. Bloomington government or police had no interest in developing policy with community stakeholders and maintained the status quo. The city of Bloomington simply failed in this basic social compact with its entire community. And as a result, we are here today with this still being unresolved. Finally, there's nothing that has been done in the past that can't be undone now with leadership and proper decision-making, including all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Next up, we have Charlotte Alvarez.
Charlotte, can you hear us? Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I'm Charlotte Alvarez, Executive Director of the Immigration Project. You all have heard me speak before, and I'm here again to support the movement towards a Welcoming City Ordinance. As I understand it, the proposal before you this evening is not about passing any one version of the ordinance. Rather, it's a signal that there's work to be done to come together and craft an ordinance that meets our city's needs. Let's take this next step together. On the eve of the inauguration of our next president, I think it's a moment for us to remind ourselves of some founding principles, namely democracy and federalism. Democracy and reasoned debate is essential for our communities. It thrives when there are spaces that bring people with diverse backgrounds and ideas together in order to truly listen, learn, work towards the common good of all. This call for action on a Welcoming City Ordinance did not come from any one group or person. It wasn't meeting the need of the Immigration Project or any other organization. It was meeting a collective need that was collectively decided. Since this project started, we've had hundreds of people who have supported the effort, attended events, spoken before you as a council. In every council meeting that I have seen around this topic, public comments have been overwhelmingly favorable. Moving forward is responding to a real need that has been repeatedly articulated and expressed, and moving forward is what democracy looks like. Second, federalism. Federalism is enshrined in the Constitution. We all know that. It's built on the principle of separation of powers. And in Illinois, we have the great tradition of home rule that allows local solutions to local issues. the federalism system and our Constitution envisions local governments making decisions that affect us. We might be in a new global era. We're all really shaped by federal and state laws, but we do have so much power to shape our local communities. And it is absolutely within the power of this council to determine how municipal resources are used and how municipal workers, such as the police officers, do their job and interact with federal officials. Deciding to move forward in this ordinance is a great way to show that our democratic values are valued and our local communities matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Carla Bailey Smith.
Carla, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hey, Carla, go ahead.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I'm here tonight representing the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bloomington Normal. And our principles guide us to believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all human beings. And that means we are not just nice, but as you use, we seek to actively work for change in our communities, such as opening up our churches to provide sanctuary to those who would otherwise have been deported. I'm here today to ask our council members to take a step beyond being nice and welcoming and to ensure that we implement actual policies for our local law enforcement to engage respectfully with any of our immigrant residents, whether they are documented or not. If you put a welcoming sign in your yard or store window, but aren't willing to even consider and discuss policies to keep families together, to support the American dream, then I say putting that sign up is disingenuous. If you support the Welcoming America initiative, but do not support codifying policies that protect our immigrant residents who come into contact with local police and build trust with our local police, then you are participating in something performative rather than something proactive. So, therefore, please consider this proposed ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks. Next, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Next up, we have Robert Garcia.
Robert?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Robert. Go ahead, buddy.
Thank you. I'm Robert Garcia. I'm a local asylum seeker sponsor in Bloomington with ASSP, Asylum Seeker Sponsorship Project, and a community navigator with the Immigration Project. I want to focus tonight on responding to one of the things that we've heard from more than one elected official on this council recently as to why they simply do not support a full Welcoming City Ordinance. As they have stated in these public meetings and to the media, they're not convinced it's needed. We can all agree that we cannot solve a problem that doesn't exist. That logic is very fair. But here is where your logic is gravely flawed. When you suggest that because you don't see it, it must not exist. Allow me to explain. If you're a person who is undocumented, you fear the police because any contact with law enforcement creates a tremendous, terrifying fear that you will be deported, you will be ripped apart from your family, and in some cases you will face imminent danger, including the possibility of death if you were to be returned to your home country. These individuals do not contact the police, even when they are a victim of crime. In some neighborhoods, when a bad individual, an opportunist criminal, has identified a person as being undocumented, they will target that person. The immigrant might be repeatedly victimized, and yet they will refuse to contact the police because they are in terrifying fear of being deported, of losing their children, losing their job. Their entire family and livelihood is at stake. So no, you don't see them. And no, you don't see the problem because they choose to hide. They live anonymously out in broad daylight, and yet they are invisible in our community. They have no choice because we refuse to give them the protection that we're fighting for tonight. I'm begging you to understand that just because you can't see it does not mean that the risk, the fear, the terror isn't real. The problem exists. You have not had to witness it. I would argue that you're very lucky and in a position of privilege that you don't fully, sincerely understand what the problem is. I can respect that. I cannot fault you for that. But I can fault you if you choose to say that because it doesn't affect you or because you can't see it, that you cannot be moved to support this ordinance. That is a very privileged and highly abusive way for you to use your power on that council. If you choose not to care, we can fault you for that. We will fault you for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Jay Enriquez.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jay Enriquez. I'm an undergrad international business student at ISU, a son of immigrants, and have lived in BloNo for 3.5 years. Today, I would like to use this opportunity to speak in favor of the Welcoming Cities Ordinance and urge you all to vote in favor of it and to pass it. The passage of a Welcoming Cities Ordinance is not an end goal, but rather a bare minimum of what a council who claims to be anti-racist should do. The passage of the Welcoming Cities Ordinance should serve as a stepping stone for this council to begin to work at ensuring the protection of all of the citizens and to prove its stance against racism and violence on our most vulnerable communities. This opportunity would allow us to collaborate with our allies in Normal to move forward in collectively building a resilient community that promotes diversity, equity, human rights, public health, education, and makes government accessible to all. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, in its rawest essence, is the embodiment of this nation's racism and corruption. It is an agency that was created in response to the 9/11 attacks and has been since used to carry out crimes against humanity at the will of the executive government. Most recently, it has been used by the executive government to justify the cruel response to the immigration crisis, and I quote, immigration crisis, on our southern border that has led to mass family separations and violation of human rights in detention centers, when in reality between 2009 and 2014, more native-born Americans left the U.S. to settle permanent residence in Mexico than those who immigrated from Mexico to the U.S., according to the Mexican National Survey of Demographic Dynamics produced by the Pew Research Center. ICE is merely a shield that allows our government to continue to practice xenophobic extremism on innocent civilians and gives a platform to white supremacists and alt-right extremists, eerily similar to those who we saw attack our Capitol. These same groups that were present at the Capitol have infiltrated and make a significant portion of ICE officers and those who collaborate with them. We cannot continue to communicate or provide resources to such an agency. In light of the Capitol events, it has never been more clear that racism is being fueled by misinformation and has plagued our country and radicalized many, including people in our community. It is your duty as elected officials to use this opportunity to set a precedent of anti-racism and to begin to work to de-radicalize our community by providing clear and factual evidence while simultaneously protecting civilians from becoming victims of the horrors of ICE and those who have fallen victims of misinformation campaigns. With this in mind, I urge you to vote yes in favor of the passing of the Welcoming Cities Ordinance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next up, we have Juliet Lind.
Good evening. My name is Juliet Lind. I'm a Bloomington resident, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Illinois State University's CAUSA, which stands for Coalition Advocating for Undocumented Student Achievement. CAUSA is a group of volunteer faculty, staff, and students that seeks to support, in any way we can, students who are undocumented or who have loved ones who are undocumented. CAUSA wholeheartedly applauds any and all efforts of the Council to make our cities welcoming to immigrants. The commitment to fill the promises that the Welcoming America initiative sets out is a laudable first step. However, it remains an urgent priority that the city also pass a welcoming ordinance to ensure that no city resources, including the police force, are involved in immigration enforcement. 75% of immigrant families have at least one undocumented family member, and the constant fear of deportation is a reality. Unfortunately, local police are often perceived as a threat because any encounter with police can potentially put a person at risk of being turned over to ICE. In addition to well-founded fears of abuse in ICE custody, detention and deportation takes people from their jobs, cuts off sources of income for the family, tears loved ones apart, and other dangers. Allow me to offer you examples of the particular fears we hear about through CAUSA's confidential conversations with students. Students who are U.S. citizens but whose parents are undocumented have told us how their parents do not feel safe driving them to campus or visiting them in Bloomington Normal. These parents heartbreakingly miss family visits, graduations, and other events connected to their children's college experience. Imagine missing your child's graduation because you're worried about being stopped for a traffic violation. Or imagine being a college student who is unable to receive the support of your parents when moving into your dorm, or having your parents witness you cross the stage at graduation. Students who are undocumented are often fearful of going out and partaking in college social life. Imagine you are too afraid to attend a party because the police might show up if there is underage drinking or the music is too loud. Black and brown students coming from Chicago often fear they are more likely to experience discrimination downstate in our communities that unfortunately have earned a reputation for being more racist and more resentful of immigrants. They feel they are under higher surveillance here. There is a common misperception in Bloomington that these things do not happen here, but they do. You are unlikely to hear about it if you are not a trusted confidant of the community. When seeking solutions, it is important to listen to the people who are closest to the problem. Like others who have spoken tonight, in the case of CALSA, we are close to the problem because of the role we assume on campus in supporting undocumented students and families. On behalf of CALSA, I urge the council to pass the Welcoming City Ordinance, a Welcoming City Ordinance, to send a clear message to our community and those passing through it that we truly value the lives, contributions, well-being, and safety of immigrants, regardless of their citizenship status. Giving these hardworking students the peace of mind that a welcoming ordinance can bring will benefit us all. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next up, we have Louis Gosselin.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. All right. Yes, my name is Louis Gosselin. I'm the Public Relations Officer for the Bloomington Normal Chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. But long before I before I held that role, I was speaking to this council 3 years ago about the need for a welcoming city ordinance. And at that time, our community came together in response to a crisis of xenophobia and the threat of open hostilities from an incoming administration towards our immigrant community. And today, we bring this issue at yet another crisis, a crisis for whether or not we will continue to uphold the kind of democracy that we want to live in. And I have to say, I've worked on a lot of issues and have been involved with a lot of initiatives in this community and before I came here 5 years ago, but never have I seen such a far-reaching, broad base of support for one common cause. For 3 years, just as we heard tonight, we've heard from faith leaders, we've heard from people that work with students in the university, we've heard from students themselves, we've heard from workers and advocates and all different walks of life coming out and saying one thing, that this community needs a Welcoming Cities Ordinance that represents the values that we hold, that is ready to actually live up to the meaning of what it means to be welcoming, not just to say it, but to actually prove it in our deeds, to make sure that when we hear of these horrors, when we hear of the crises that are happening in these detention centers, that our immigrant brothers and sisters and neighbors know that this community will do its part in protecting them, that there is a safe home here in Bloomington. You know, I think that it's been well said throughout the speakers that there are a number of reasons that this is so important. Over the summer, we had an uprising where people came out and questioned and called for an open conversation to move a process of democracy, to talk about what it means to actually have truly safe communities and what public safety should look like. This is a step towards calling our community into that conversation. As Don Carlson mentioned, when it was surfaced that our local police department actually had communicated with ICE despite having said that they hadn't, this is a step in the direction of building trust with our city and our immigrant community. When we talk about the crisis of racism and division that has thrown our country into turmoil for the last 4 years, this is a step towards healing, and you have the power to make it happen. You have the power to prove to us that this process works, that our democracy works, and that we can count on you to listen to us when we call for you to make a change. So please pass the Welcoming City Ordinance as introduced by Council Members Carrillo and Crabill.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, anyone else?
Yes, we have Kevin Lopez.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to ask you to please support and vote yes on Welcoming Cities Ordinance. We know these people broke the law, broke an immigration law, but they're here. They working here illegally, but paying taxes legally. They don't have any benefits from the government, but they welcome to pay taxes. So welcoming cities is just a little better justice for them. So please vote yes and support Welcoming Cities Ordinance. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anything else?
Yes, we have 3 more left. Matt Tosco.
Okay, let me see. Okay, we may have time for all. Go ahead, depending on how long they go. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. Yeah, my name is Matt Tosco. I live here in Bloomington. I'm speaking to this body today in full support of advancing the Welcoming Cities Ordinance as proposed by Jen Carrillo and Jeff Crabill. This ordinance is how we as a city can begin to truly embrace everyone who makes our communities great. Instead of being a city that is comfortable with allowing draconian federal agencies to target our most vulnerable. It's time to draw a line in our rich central Illinois topsoil by passing an ordinance with teeth that officially says, no, we will not use our common resources to aid and abet ICE in any way. Without a Welcoming Cities Ordinance, the perhaps well-intentioned Welcoming America initiative is nothing more than a watered-down, feel-good distraction from what we really need to be doing for our families and individuals in this community. Given the egregious abuses inflicted upon people and families by ICE that started before Trump's escalations and will continue under Biden, coupled with the fact that many undocumented immigrants are fleeing inhumane conditions deliberately forced on them by U.S. imperialism, I think that advancing the Welcoming Cities Ordinance is a moral necessity, and that to choose not to renders one a pretty crappy person who has no place in leadership at any level. Don't be that crappy person. Advance the Welcoming Cities Ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Next up, we have Dave Bentlin.
Dave, can you hear us, Dave?
Hello, Mayor Renner and City Council members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to these public comments. I am speaking on behalf of the Prairie Pride Coalition, our LGBTQI+ community organization. 19 years ago, your predecessors on the Bloomington City Council enacted an ordinance that offered protection to members of our gay and lesbian community. Up to that point, my gay brothers and lesbian sisters who lived in Bloomington were vulnerable. There was no law, local, state, or otherwise, that prevented us from being fired from our jobs or evicted from our households. 19 years ago, your predecessors took the visionary step that made Bloomington a safer, more equitable place for people who historically had been marginalized and underserved. Opponents claimed that such an ordinance would open the floodgates to litigation, and some even argued Bloomington Normal would become the new Sodom and Gomorrah. History tells us that neither of those predictions came true. Instead, Bloomington became more welcoming, more accepting, and more prosperous for all of its citizens and visitors. Tonight, you are faced with another ordinance that has the potential to ensure that the City of Bloomington continues its efforts to provide a welcoming environment for all people. The Welcoming America initiative that you voted to join at a previous meeting is a good initial step, but more is needed. Indeed, the Welcoming America website advocates for welcoming cities ordinances and supports its members that pursue this option in their municipalities. Studies have shown that immigrants are less likely to report crimes or cooperate in criminal investigations if they fear potential deportation as the result of routine interaction with local law enforcement agencies. A Welcoming Cities Ordinance would remove this fear and increase the flow of information to law enforcement officials, which would in turn help in crime-fighting efforts. Our community would become even safer for all people who reside in, work in, and visit it. It is not lost on me that your meeting and deliberation of this ordinance comes on the heels of the birthday of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A local church I attend fashioned its weekend message around a famous question Dr. King asked of our citizens: what are you doing to help others? As you reflect on this question, I hope you will answer it with your heart, with compassion, and with fairness to all. Please make this community better. by supporting a Welcoming Cities Ordinance that would ensure safe and equitable treatment of all people who work and live in and who visit Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Last up, we have Kara McMorris. There
Karen,
you go.
can you hear us? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I am a pastor at Hope Church and also a preschool teacher locally. I work with children and families who are already dedicated and involved parts of our community, and they also happen to be immigrants, that some are documented, some are not. These children are already parts of our local programming and our services. Their families serve you and I in Bloomington most every day. I spend so much of my time teaching our children that they are safe and that they are loved in our Twin Cities, that the grown-ups in this town love them and want what is best for them. Part of this is knowing that police officers will not be going out of their ways to divide their families. My vested interest comes with the fact that if a parent is removed from their family, if a parent is detained simply because of their immigration status, who is left to care for the rest of the family? It's us. It's your local nonprofit. Because the only ethical thing to do is to continue to love on and serve these families. But we as nonprofits end up cut off at our knees, which you've heard from other speakers tonight who represent nonprofits. If you choose to eliminate this topic from your coming agendas and refuse to continue moving forward, you're not only speaking volumes about our lack of welcome as a community, but you're deciding for these children who we are already obligated to and responsible for, not to offer them a sense of peace. This ordinance is not about the presence or absence of immigrants in our community. It is about giving a sense of peace to these children, to these families who are already here working, who already call Bloomington home. All of our children deserve the peace and certainty that their community leaders, that you and I, are committed to keeping their families together. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for being a part of bringing more peace to the families of our community.
Thank you very much.
1 hour later.
Leslie, we're going to move on to, Madam Clerk, the next item under C, discussion regarding a council initiative submitted by Councilmember Carrillo for the city's legal department to draft an ordinance to provide direction and instruction to city staff, including the police department, on how to interact with residents and other agencies as it relates to immigration issues. And we have several options here, and that is to either have the initiative placed on a future city council agenda for further consideration or action. It's 1. 2, have staff evaluate and prepare an analysis on the proposed initiative and bring it back for further council discussion. Or 3, deny the initiative being placed on a future agenda. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Carrillo. You have about 3 minutes, and then we have a very brief, approximately 3-minute council discussion, and that would be just which of these 3 options do you favor as we move forward? Councilmember Carrillo.
Thank you so much. And I just want to take a moment to thank all the people who spoke with so much corazon and passion and moral conviction during the public comment period tonight, and not just tonight, but over the past several years on this topic. You all are the best that our community has to offer. So I thank you for taking the time to be here. So nearly 4 years ago, a number of local organizations like Illinois People's Action, the Immigration Project, the YWCA, CAUSA, the local DSA chapter, and more came together to form the Keep Families Together campaign. And they stepped to the Bloomington City Council to ask them to pass a Welcoming City Ordinance that would protect our undocumented residents by establishing a very clear separation between ICE and local law enforcement. That is the heart of a Welcoming City Ordinance. And the ordinance that Councilmember Crabill and I are requesting staff to draft and to bring forth for a vote at a future council meeting through this agenda initiative mirrors that original ordinance that was proposed by the Keep Families Together campaign. And I know this because I was one of the lead organizers of that campaign before I was on the city council. So I'd like to highlight just some of the most important components of this ordinance and also to talk about the reasoning behind them. But first, I do want to speak about process and reiterate some of what has already been said by folks in public comment, which is that after 4 years of having hundreds of residents march and rally and fast and organize, and after these groups filed a FOIA, which revealed very inappropriate communications between ICE and the Bloomington Police Department, which no one in local government at the time acknowledged, took responsibility for, or least of all apologized for. And after countless attempts by various political actors to dodge the topic, either by having it pulled from the agenda or, there's been tons of ways that this could have been derailed. But now we're here, and our people deserve a transparent decision-making process from us. And our people deserve a vote from us on a true welcoming city ordinance. People deserve to know what their representatives stand for and what they're willing to fight for. So if you believe in full rights for our immigrant residents, then I humbly ask you to join Councilmember Crabill and I in supporting a true and strong welcoming city ordinance. If you don't agree with what we're putting forth and you want to suggest an alternative, then vote to advance this conversation to a regular council meeting where we can vote. You can introduce an amendment and it may pass or fail, but it will be a transparent process played out in the public where your constituents can see what you are advocating for and believe. And if you disagree, then vote no and stand by your disagreement. But let's not cut deals in the back room, and let's not settle for the least common denominator. And for how many people have mentioned Dr. King and probably paid lip service to him yesterday, I hope that you will heed his words, that we are called to speak for the weak, for the voiceless, for the victims of our nation, and for those it calls its enemy. For no document from human hands can make these humans any less our brothers and sisters. So colleagues, please, I ask you to do the right thing and advance our initiative so that people can get a long overdue vote on their welcoming city ordinance. The time is always right to do what's right.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this point then, we have just a kind of a very brief. I'm going to start with just Jamie, letting you know in advance. I'm going to start with Ward 1 and go to Ward 9. Just essentially, quickly, should we advance the initiative to put it on a future council agenda? Should staff prepare an analysis and bring it to future council, or do we just deny this? So I'm going to start with Councilmember Matthew, and I'm going to go to Councilmember Boland, and then Councilmember Wambwe. I'm going to go Ward 1 through 9 around the what would be the dais if we were there. Jamie.
The fun of being in Ward 1 right now. So yes to moving things forward. However, there's going to need to be options because I do not support all of the pieces of what has been presented. I've talked to Jen and Jeff about this before. I'm happy, and I supported last time the portions that would that deal with immigration. And if it stays focused on immigration, then fine. But I think that there are pieces of this that wander loose of immigration, and that's where my concerns lie. So, I think that this is not something we're going to vote on in the next 2 weeks, but it's something I think we can get to a collaboration where we have something everybody's happy with.
Okay, thank you. Donna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just a week ago, the Welcoming America initiative was voted on unanimously. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't think there's enough substance to it. However, there
Donna,
is.
We really, the whole discussion here is supposed to be 3 minutes. So
Jamie had 3 minutes, and I'm just going to throw this out.
I'm sorry, 3 minutes for everybody collectively.
Yeah, I understand. These itemized demands can be handled through the Welcoming America process. This ordinance is not welcoming. It's about protecting undocumented residents.
So is that
Welcoming
no?
America also does that too.
Okay, so is that a no?
I will vote no.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wambwe.
Yeah, I'm going to vote no as well because I think the topic of immigration is extremely complex, and I think it belongs, in the arena of the federal government. And as far as I understand, there is the incoming administration is looking at this particular topic very closely.
I'm sorry, okay. I shouldn't have let us get out too. It's
okay.
Like a sentence or so. Okay, so you're voting no.
Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You're on record voting no. Councilmember Enid.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think that we should push this initiative forward. I am ready to have staff work on drafting, but if not, that's certainly going forward with the conversation. It has been clearly communicated to us by experts in the community and those who work with immigrants that this is the one leadership action we can take that will make a difference. And it is not prohibited by law. Thank you for sharing Kwame Raoul's statement on immigration policy. Alderman Bolin, I found that very, very useful.
Thank you. Thanks. Councilmember Painter. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out Ward 5. Sorry.
I'm voting no on this because I think that our police have been horribly mischaracterized through all of this. I think our immigrant population has been lied to and made to be afraid. And I think that that is unspeakably cruel. I think that it's self-serving, and I think it's immoral. So, no.
I think you're going in and out, and I don't know if it's my computer or if it's happening for everybody, but I support my own initiative.
Yeah, I have spoken on behalf of a Welcoming Cities Ordinance for years, and I look forward to this council finally taking action because no one in our community is safe until we're all safe. Yes.
Mayor, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I didn't mean to do that to myself. Sorry. Councilmember Crabill, sorry.
Thank you. Last week we said we're a welcoming city. Tonight we vote on whether we meant that. For the protection of our immigrants, for the health of our community, I vote yes to move forward with this welcoming city ordinance discussion. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Bray. Ward 9.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the comments of everyone. I'm voting no to this. I think that some of the comments that have been made underscore the reason why this isn't the right solution for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I'm not mistaken, Madam Clerk, we had 5-4? Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct.
So we do bring this forward, and then some did suggest that staff would do a little bit of work on this. I would suggest that Councilmember Carrillo work with staff to come up with several options. I did detect some who wanted us to move forward that wanted some additional options with respect to this, particularly Councilmember Matthey.
I have to do that.
So thank you very much.